Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and today we're doing a sub and amp install on this Subaru WRX. In this install, we're going to show you how to wire up the amplifier underneath the front driver's seat, wire up the subwoofer, and make all the connections behind the radio and underneath the hood. Let's go ahead and get started. As we plan our install, the first thing that we want to discover is where our battery is mounted. Now it's here on the driver's side front corner of the engine bay. What we're going to do is connect into that. Now eventually we're going to connect into the positive side of here on the battery. We have to run an inline fuse, and we're probably going to do that around the factory fuse box area. We need to find firewall access so we can run the power wire through the firewall into the inside of the vehicle, and we're going to run that power wire to underneath the seat. So that's the first thing we're going to do to get started. Now what we've done here is mounted our fuse holder here on top of the factory fuse box. Now we've done this strategically. If you pull this on off, you have to make sure when you mount this that you don't screw into any relays or capacitors or your fuses here. Screws we use are super short and they barely peek out. So that'll be a good little spot for us that's easily serviceable. Now we have the positive here on the battery. When we're ready to hook this up, we'll actually hook it up there. And we left enough length that we can install on this stud while still maintaining the factory terminal cover. So from this point, we're going to go ahead now and take the rest of our power wire out from the fuse, and we're going to go through the firewall to underneath the front driver's side seat. Okay, so to gain access through the firewall, the main loom, the main wiring harness for the car actually goes through the driver's front fender. And so the grommet that we're going to go through is along the same route. The best way to get to it is go ahead and turn your wheel all the way to the left to give you plenty of space to work in here. Now if you have the wide body version, you may have a different fender here, but regardless, the wiring loom's in the same spot. So what we're going to do, inside here, there's a couple of clips that we need to release. Some look like a little Phillips head, other ones are just little clips you pop out with a flathead. Once we remove the inner fender lining, that'll allow us to get the access to go through the firewall. Okay, kind of find all kinds of surprises when you pull this stuff apart, but that allowed us to now gain access to the grommet there, and just so we see the same thing on the right hand side, there's actually an unused grommet, which is perfect. It's what we're going to go ahead and run our wire through. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it out and punch a hole through it, and then we're going to feed our power wire through there, and that'll get us inside the vehicle. Okay, so we pop that grommet out and fed our wire through there, and with that grommet popped out, we put a little hole in it and then fit the wire through so we can feed that grommet and seal up that wire there so we don't have any moisture getting into the cabin. And then we fed that wire up right there as well. So at this point, once we get that grommet reinstalled, we can put the fender cover back in and reinstall all the hardware. Okay, so at this point, what we've done is run our power wire into the inside of the car. That's where the wire came out with the grommet. We're just using a big bulk pack because we do a ton of installs. But with your amplifier power wire, from this point, we will be popping these panels off so we can run the wire cleanly up underneath these panels. We're going to be mounting it up underneath the driver's seat. Now we do have an impact. You can use a socket, just a regular ratchet socket as well. But we have a 14, and we're going to remove the bolts on all four corners to make space for us so we can mount our amplifier underneath the seat. Alright, so that gives us now the space to go ahead and mount the amplifier on this flat spot up underneath the carpet. We're going to now run our power wire, start the ground wire, and then run our RCA's remote turn on wire up to the radio and the speaker wire to the sub in the trunk. All right, so we've run this down up underneath. Comes out there. It'll go into the power input on the amplifier. Now for our ground, we actually found this little flap that opens up, and there's a beam has a threaded nut that's been welded to the beam itself, and we have a bolt that actually threads in perfectly there. So what we're going to do is use a wire brush and clean that up so there's no paint, so it's metal on metal, and then that'll allow us to then run our ground to our amplifier as well. Alrighty, so we went ahead and connected our power wire, which is this red one, to the positive input on the amplifier, and our ground, which is the red one with these black stripes on it, just to indicate that it is the ground. Got that connected as well. For our ground, put a ring terminal on our ground wire. We clean the paint off really good with a wire brush, and then we put our bolt through there with a locking washer and a regular washer, and that thing is solid, really good ground, very little resistance there. Now next, we got our speaker cable. We're using New Concepts 12 gauge wire. We ran that also up underneath and pulled it out here as well. Then from here, we'll continue this back along the kick panel to the trunk area. We have plenty of cable down here below to make it all the way to the trunk. And then finally, we have our remote turn-on wire and RCAs that we have taped every about 6 inches or so. Remote turn-on wire goes to the remote input on the amplifier. The RCAs will go to the RCA input on the back. And then we'll also run this up underneath the carpet and work our way up through the center console to our radio. Okay. So we went ahead and connected the positive on the battery. Since we have connected the amplifier completely up, it was safe now to go ahead and put the positive on the battery. I actually put a little hole in this cover so we can put the cover back on, and left plenty of length on both ends. Because we have it mounted to the top of the fuse box itself, if we ever need to service those fuses, we need enough length to get the box cover out of the way. We're done underneath the hood. Let's go ahead now and connect the subwoofer up, as well as the RCA and remote turn-on wire to the radio. Okay, so we got our amplifier mounted the way we mounted it. So we have a piece of this 16th inch ABS plastic, and we just slipped it up underneath the carpet and put screws through that and sandwich the carpet between the amp and the plastic so it's nice and snug, not going anywhere. We zip tied everything up. Basically, the amplifier's done. Nice thing is we can get to the gain and low pass filter and everything on the other side of the amp when the seat's remounted. So we're good to put the seat down, mount the seat with our 4 14mm bolts, and then take apart the dash and hook up the RCA and the remote turn-on wire. All right, here in the trunk, sorry, it's a little bit dark, but we ran our speaker wire from the amplifier all the way back to the trunk here, connected the positive and negative of the speaker wire to our sub. Now the sub's not a great fit for this type of truck. The sub came out of a Porsche Boxster, which doesn't have much space at all, and so down the road this individual may want to find a better box that better fits this car. Alright, so with the RCAs, what we did, if you get your hand back underneath, you can actually pull this out. So we ran the RCAs down up underneath so we can connect them in with the remote turn-on wire. And then we ran it down along the center console there, so you can just tuck this right back on in. You don't have to take apart much to get that there. And then at this time, RCAs come out there, but we need to go up to the radio. All right, so at this time, we need to pop the radio out just temporarily so we can wire the RCA to the sub output and a remote turn-on wire. So let's go ahead and get the radio out. Four Phillips screws. It's okay. It's a little tight. Previous installer looks like there's a couple cables that are a little too short, so there's not a lot of length there, but it's all right. We can still find everything we need. All right, so we're looking for our blue-white wire from our radio. Most radios, that's the remote turn-on wire, and that's what we're using. And so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and fish the wires up through from the kick panel area up into the radio cavity. We have the blue white wire that comes off the radio. We're going to go ahead and strip that back. We have the remote turn on wire. And what we're going to do here is twist those two together. What this is going to do is going to trigger the amplifier to turn on as soon as the radio boots up. And we're going to go ahead and crimp this. Nice good crimp. And now we have a lot of extra RCA cable, so we will bundle the rest and just tuck it back behind the radio. But we're going to connect into the subwoofer output on the back here. Go ahead and put our radio back in. Now before we button things up, we want to go ahead and test it to ensure that all our speakers are working and the sub's working as well. Yep, everything's working and I can hear the sub's booting up. We still got to do a little bit of tuning, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and get the screws put back in and get the dash all put back together and clean up. Our AC vents put back in here. That's about it. Now at this point, we'll probably do a little bit of tuning on the amplifier. We're good to go with the install and the video. If you have any questions, go ahead and post a comment below. Thanks guys for watching. We appreciate the support and we will see you in the next video.